The first chord hasn't even landed, and the pianist's wrists are already flexing 7 degrees beyond the clinical threshold for injury. This is Rachmaninoff's third piano concerto. 1,162 bars push tendon strain to 32% of maximum voluntary capacity. Elite musicians call it the killer. Some have frozen mid-performance. Others walked away and never returned. In 1907, the composer wrote 2 words in a private letter that would curse concert stages for over a century. What Rachmaninoff built wasn't just a masterpiece. It was something designed to find the exact point where the world's greatest pianists break. Sergei Rachmaninoff sits at his desk, hunched over a letter that will never be meant for public eyes. His hand trembles, not from cold, but from something darker. The ink barely dries before he writes what he cannot unsay. When I get it written, I give my solemn word. No more symphonies. Curse them. The phrase is a wound seeping through the page. Curse them. 2 words spat out like a private hex, not for the critics, not for the audience, but for the music itself. He has just survived the humiliation of his first symphony's premiere, a disaster so total that fellow composer César Cui compared it to a conservatory in hell. Rachmaninoff's confidence is shattered. Each new work feels like a dare against fate. That letter, dated 1907, is not a melodramatic flourish. It is a private oath, the kind uttered when genius and despair meet in the same room. The world will never see the exact moment when his pen gouges the paper, but the words are real. Curse them. The phrase will echo for generations, misquoted and misunderstood, twisted into a warning for anyone who dares to follow his footsteps to the edge of artistic ruin. He isn't cursing the critics. He isn't cursing the audience. He's cursing the music that demands everything and gives nothing back but sleepless nights and the threat of collapse. The vow is not a confession, it's a dare. What happens to a composer who pours his pain into every note, who writes music that only a handful of mortals can survive? In that moment, Rachmaninoff's frustration is more than personal. It becomes a fuse. The curse is not just a phrase in a letter, it's a virus, infecting every pianist who will ever attempt the impossible. The world will soon discover what it means to face a piece of music that seems determined to break even the strongest hands and minds. But for now, the curse is silent, waiting for its first victim. March 1897. The concert hall in St. Petersburg is packed, but the air is thick with anticipation of disaster. Sergei Rachmaninoff, barely 24, stands backstage as his first symphony is unleashed on the world. What follows is not music, but a public execution. The orchestra stumbles, the audience shifts in their seats. When the final note dies, the silence feels like a sentence. The next morning, the press delivers its verdict with surgical cruelty. César Cui, the most feared critic in Russia, writes that the symphony sounds like a conservatory in hell. The phrase is poison. It spreads through newspapers, whispered in conservatories, repeated in salons. Suddenly, Rachmaninoff isn't just a young composer with a failed premiere, he is the architect of a musical catastrophe. The review does more than wound, it brands. A conservatory in hell becomes code for artistic overreach, a warning to anyone who might dare to dream too big. The ridicule is relentless. One critic calls the music monstrous and cacophonous. Another claims it is the work of a madman. The Russian Musical Gazette wonders aloud if Rachmaninoff will ever recover. Friends avoid him, teachers shake their heads. The myth of the cursed composer is born, not in private agony, but in public humiliation. Rachmaninoff's name becomes a cautionary tale among students, whispered with a mix of awe and terror. The phrase sticks, outliving the review itself. For years, every new work he writes is measured against that first disaster. Every rehearsal, every performance carries the ghost of that night. The fear of collapse is no longer personal, it's generational. Future pianists will grow up hearing that to play Rachmaninoff is to risk everything. The curse is no longer just a private oath, it's a public prophecy. This is how a single sentence in a newspaper becomes a generational myth. The Conservatory in Hell review doesn't just haunt Rachmaninoff, It haunts every pianist who sits down to play his music, every listener drawn to the edge of beauty and terror. The curse is alive, passed from critic to composer, from composer to performer, from performer to audience, and no one is safe from its fire. There is no gentle introduction. The pianist must strike a block chord at full force, fingers splayed to the edge of their reach. For most, the hand simply cannot span the distance. For some, the effort draws pain from bone and tendon. The opening bars alone require a stretch that matches nearly 70% of the average concert pianist's maximum handspan. The score remains unmoved, its demands unyielding. The challenge only intensifies. In the cadenza, hands must leap 2 octaves in an instant, 12 centimeters, then back again, while the wrist twists, the thumb tucks, and the arm flings the fingers across the keys. The tempo never relents. Each leap courts disaster, every missed note is a wound exposed. In a single measure, the left hand slides 9 centimeters sideways, faster than conscious thought, as the right braces for the next impossible chord. This is not just about reach. The true ordeal lies in the combination: block chords requiring every finger, rapid-fire octave chains, and inner melodies that must emerge above the storm. The cadenza, notorious for breaking even seasoned virtuosos, forces the pianist to balance melody, harmony, and bass with one hand, all while stretching, leaping, and compressing joints beyond comfort. The notation itself dares the player, bar after bar, as if written for a pianist with a third hand or a body that ignores pain. Competition archives lay out the struggle in numbers. The first movement alone spans 1,162 bars, each a potential trap. The cadenza's octave chains can reach over 1,000 notes per minute. The required stretch, 13 centimeters, remains out of reach for anyone whose handspan is less than 19. Even Rachmaninoff himself, whose hands measured nearly 12 inches, admitted to rolling chords, gliding the wrist, and staggering the attack to avoid injury. Vladimir Horowitz rolled the opening chord, sacrificing clarity for survival. Martha Argerich revoiced entire passages, crossing hands to steal precious millimeters. Adaptation is not always enough. Biomechanical studies reveal that smaller-handed pianists compensate with extreme wrist flexion, increasing muscle load by almost 50% compared to larger-handed peers. The little finger, forced past its natural range, becomes the weak link, tendons straining, joints locking. Clinics report ulnar collateral ligament strain, flexor tendinopathy, and nerve compression in those who attempt the piece too soon. The myth of the big hand is written in scar tissue. Yet the music's brilliance is inseparable from its danger. Block chords shimmer with power, octave chains blaze with energy. The audience hears triumph, but the pianist feels the threat in every bar. The score becomes a battlefield, ambition against anatomy. In slow motion, fingers blur, the hand contorts, the mind races. Rachmaninoff's curse lives on, etched into the flesh and memory of every pianist who dares. A single note can feel like a warning. But Rachmaninoff's curse is not confined to one piece, or even one genre of pain. It radiates through his entire piano canon, a map of emotional and physical extremes, each work a new trap for the unwary. The Prelude in C-sharp minor, the Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini, Piano Sonata No. 2, the Etudes Tableau, the Moments Musicaux. Each title is a door, and each door opens onto a different storm. The Prelude in C-sharp minor, Opus 3 No. 2, begins with a tolling bell, a sound so heavy it feels like grief made physical. The pianist's hands must leap, then collapse, then surge again, all within the span of a few seconds. The left hand hammers out chords that threaten to drown the melody, while the right must float above, singing through the darkness. It is a study in opposites, power and fragility, control and surrender. Even on the ABRSM Grade 8 syllabus, the prelude is a rite of passage that leaves hands tingling, wrists aching, nerves frayed. The Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini, Opus 43, is a carnival of variation, 24 masks, each more dazzling and dangerous than the last. The pianist races against the orchestra, threading rapid double notes at breakneck speed, then slamming into brick wall chords that demand instant transformation from featherlight touch to brute force. Variation 24 is notorious, a gauntlet of finger-twisting patterns, a test of memory, stamina, and raw will. Every variation is a new personality, a new threat. The audience hears fireworks. The pianist feels the fuse burning down. Piano Sonata No. 2 in B-flat minor is a maze of thick textures and sudden silences. The opening bars are a descent. Chords stacked like stones, hands stretched to the limit. The second movement offers no rest, only a brief hallucination of calm before the final onslaught. Even the revised 1931 version, lighter on the page, is heavy in the hands. The sonata is not just difficult, it is relentless. The performer becomes a shadow boxer, fighting fatigue, memory, and the ever-present risk of collapse. The Etudes tableau, opus 33, 39, and 40, are sketches of disaster. Each etude is a miniature crisis, a technical puzzle with no single solution. Some demand rapid-fire octaves, others intricate voicing or left-hand leaps that can snap tendons if misjudged. The moments musico, opus 16, lure the pianist with lyrical beauty, then ambush with sudden bursts of violence. A single page can shift from lullaby to thunderclap without warning. These pieces are often assigned to advanced intermediate students, but their emotional weight is crushing even for professionals. They are not warm-ups, they are warnings. It is not just the hands that pay the price. The mind too is dragged into the storm. Martha Argerich once confessed that even the so-called smaller Rachmaninoff works left her physically shaking, haunted by the sense that each phrase could tip into disaster. She played the Etudes tableau like a woman possessed, her face a mask of focus and fear. In her words, "You don't play Rachmaninoff, you survive him." Every piece in this labyrinth is a new test of limits. The curse is not a single blow, but a pattern. A series of escalating dares, each more seductive, more punishing, more impossible to resist. The audience hears beauty. The pianist feels the edge of survival. And somewhere, in the space between, the myth grows stronger. Next comes the reckoning of what this music does to the body itself. A concert pianist's body is a machine built for precision, but Rachmaninoff's music turns it into a battleground. Inside a laboratory, motion-captured dots race across skin as a pianist's hand stretches to the edge of its reach, 13 centimeters, fingers splayed, tendons straining. This is not just artistry, it is a test of flesh and bone. The opening block chord in Concerto No. 3 forces a stretch that swallows 70% of the average pianist's maximum span. For some, the hand simply will not open wide enough. For others, the price is pain that lingers long after the final note. Numbers tell a story the audience never hears. In a pilot study, 15 concert-level pianists were fitted with EMG sensors and tracked as they attacked the concerto's most infamous passages. The data is brutal. Small-handed players, those with a span under 18 centimeters, showed a spike in wrist flexion, an extra 7 degrees just to reach the chord. That angle means more pressure on the tendons, more risk for injury. The muscle load on the forearm extensor shoots up to 32% of maximum voluntary contraction, nearly half again as high as their larger-handed peers. The little finger, always the weak link, struggles to keep up, peaking at only 28% of its possible force, while the index and middle fingers are forced to pick up the slack, burning out faster. Every adaptation is a gamble. Some pianists roll the chord, sacrificing clarity for survival. Others twist the wrist, pushing the ulnar collateral ligament to its limit. Clinics report a parade of injuries: flexor digitorum profundus tendinopathy, wrist extensor compartment syndrome, even nerve compression that leaves fingers numb for weeks. The score does not care. Each page is a dare. There is no myth here, only anatomy and physics. Rachmaninoff's music does not just threaten the mind, it wages war on the body. The curse is written in scar tissue and sleepless nights, in the silent pain that follows brilliance. And as the sensors come off and the pianist flexes aching fingers, a new question waits in the dark. What happens when the body's limits bleed into the mind? A concert stage is a battlefield, but the real war is fought in the mind. The curse of Sergei Rachmaninoff runs deeper than torn tendons or aching wrists. It is a psychological gauntlet sharpened by the myth of collapse, mastery, anxiety. The phrase stalks every virtuoso who sits before the keys, whispering that survival is not guaranteed. Each note is a test, not just of skill, but of memory, nerve, and self-worth. In the glare of competition, the stakes become absolute. A single lapse, a blank space where the next chord should be, can turn a rising star into a cautionary tale. The fear is not only failure, it is the terror of forgetting everything under the world's gaze. The mind, exhausted by weeks of midnight rehearsal, starts to play tricks. The hands know the path, but the brain hesitates. Suddenly, the music vanishes. Silence. The audience holds its breath. The pianist drowns in the echo. Van Cliburn, his name forever linked to the crucible of the 1958 Tchaikovsky competition, once described the sensation as standing on a cliff edge with the wind at your back and nothing but the abyss below. He survived Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto, but not without scars. Biographers recall a near catastrophic memory collapse in his legendary performance. Only a last-second improvisation saved him from disaster. That moment became legend. But for every Cliburn who claws his way back, dozens vanish into the fog of forgotten notes. Inside the rehearsal room, the pressure is relentless. Every bar becomes a survival drill. Elite pianists, Martha Argerich, Daniil, Trifonov, Yuja, Wang, describe sleepless nights haunted by the threat of blanking out. The score is a labyrinth, one wrong turn, and the way back is lost. Psychologists call it the fear of the masterpiece. The music is not just hard, it is dangerous. The expectation of collapse becomes a prophecy, tightening the chest, clouding the mind, making the hands sweat and slip. Competitions magnify the nightmare. The audience is not just watching, they are waiting for the fall. Judges, hungry for perfection, become silent executioners. A single mental slip can erase years of work. The myth of the curse becomes a shadow that grows with every retelling. Memory collapse, public breakdown, the slow-motion horror of a mind betrayed by its own ambition. Survival becomes the only law. Pianists rehearse not just the notes, but the panic. They train for disaster, mental drills, breath control, visualization, all to outwit the curse. But the question lingers, is mastery possible, or is survival the only victory? In the world of Rachmaninoff, every performance is a wager of mind against myth, and the house always keeps the score. The pianist's hands hover above the keys, sweat beading on the brow, the orchestra breathing in unison. Then the lights flicker, not on stage but on a screen. 1996. The film Shine explodes into the public consciousness, and with it the myth of the Rachmaninoff Curse finds a new shape. David Helfgott, trembling, obsessed, battered by his own genius, sits before the impossible, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3. The camera lingers on his shaking hands. The audience dissolves into shadow, and the music becomes a storm that threatens to swallow him whole. Only the mad would attempt it. That's the line that echoed through theatres, lifted straight from the film's fevered marketing. It didn't matter that the story was part invention, part memory. What mattered was the feeling, a sense that Rachmaninoff's masterpiece wasn't just music, but a test of sanity. Viewers left the theatre whispering about the curse, about the concerto that could break the body and the mind. Shine didn't invent the legend, but it poured gasoline on the fire, giving the myth a face, a voice, and a cinematic heartbeat. Suddenly, the curse was no longer a secret whispered in green rooms or late-night practice studios. It was everywhere. Critics debated whether Helfgott's collapse was inevitable or whether the music itself had hunted him down. Magazine covers ran with the story, the piece that drove a genius mad. The line between fact and fiction blurred. For every pianist who had ever flinched at the opening chord, the film offered both an alibi and a prophecy. If Helfgott, with his brilliance and fragility, could be shattered on stage, what hope did anyone else have? Social media was still young, but the ripple effect was immediate. Piano teachers fielded anxious questions from students. Is it really dangerous? YouTube clips from Shine were passed around as proof that the curse was real. The phrase Rachmaninoff's curse began to appear in concert programs, in backstage gossip, in the anxious eyes of competitors waiting their turn. The film's shadow stretched far beyond the cinema. infecting public memory with a new fear that to play Rachmaninoff No. 3 was to gamble with your own mind. Every retelling, every viral clip, every whispered warning became part of a feedback loop, amplifying the legend. The curse was no longer just a burden for pianists, it was a spectacle for the world. The line between collapse and applause had never felt thinner. A single viral moment can turn a curse into an epidemic. In 2021, an Instagram reel loops Yuja Wang, her hands blurring across the keys, sweat shining on her wrists, the caption screaming, "Rachmaninoff claims another victim." Within days, the clip racks up 2.3 million views, reposted by classical pages, meme accounts, and even fitness influencers. The comments split between awe and schadenfreude, with some asking, "How is this even human?" and others saying, "I'd break my fingers." YouTube's algorithm catches the scent. A compilation titled Rach 3 Pianists Destroyed surges past 4.8 million views in a month. Each collapse, each trembling hand, each blank stare in the cadenza is replayed, dissected, shared. Lang Lang, who once called the piece a mental Everest, is clipped mid-interview, his words spliced into a meme. Rachmaninoff, never again. The myth multiplies with every click. Reddit threads spiral into late-night confessionals, anonymous competitors recounting how the left hand locked up, how the memory vanished, how the audience's breath felt like a countdown to disaster. TikTok duets appear, side-by-side footage of concert halls and bedroom pianos, teenagers laughing, then going silent as the opening chord lands. The curse is no longer a rumor among pianists. It is a digital badge of honor, a dare, a punchline, a warning. Metrics don't lie. The hashtag Rachmaninoff Curse crosses 12 million combined views across platforms by the end of 2022. Each new viral post tightens the feedback loop. Fame and fear feed each other. Every stumble is proof, every triumph a fluke. Survival tactics become their own genre. Tutorials on hand stretches, memory hacks, psychological tricks. But the more strategies circulate, the more impossible the music seems. The myth thrives not in concert halls, but in the endless scroll, where collapse means content, and content means immortality. Yuja Wang's hands, Lang Lang's haunted smile, the meme of a pianist face palming after the final chord. These are the new icons. The curse is no longer just a story whispered backstage. It is a living algorithm, hungry for the next viral breakdown, the next genius to fall. And as the numbers climb, so does the pressure. Who will survive the next round? Who will become the next meme? And what happens when the world stops laughing and starts believing that the myth is real? For every pianist who faces the edge of collapse, there's another who claws back with something more dangerous: adaptation. The myth says only giants survive. The truth is more complicated and more human. Inside the rehearsal room, the first defense is mechanical, rolling the chord, a desperate whispered trick. The pianist lets the wrist glide in a split-second arc, striking each note a hair's breadth apart. It's not cheating, it's survival. Vladimir Horowitz, whose hands could span the keys like a spider, still rolled the opening block chord of Rachmaninoff's third piano concerto. He traded clarity for safety. The sound blurs, but the hand escapes disaster. In the cadenza, Martha Argerich, her hands barely reaching the span, crossed fingers and re-voiced inner lines, stealing time and space from the impossible. The audience never knows, the body remembers. Rolling is only the beginning. Revoicing becomes a lifeline when the hand can't reach. The pianist shifts the melody to a stronger finger or splits the chord between hands, hiding the breach beneath a flood of sound. It's a magician's trick, a sleight of hand that fools the ear, if not the body. Yuja Wang, famous for her athletic reach, still marks finger substitutions in her scores, reserving the little finger for melody, never brute force. Each adaptation is a confession. The music is bigger than any hand. Conditioning is the silent war. Away from the stage, elite pianists train like athletes. Isometric holds, slow motion practice, finger stretches until the tendons burn. Daniil Trifonov spends hours building endurance in the second and third fingers, the ones that bear the load when the outer digits fail. Clinics report that targeted conditioning can drop muscle load by up to 20% during the most brutal passages. Every percentage point is a chance to survive one more measure. The numbers tell their own story. In controlled trials, pianists who rolled chords and revoiced inner lines saw a 20% reduction in peak muscle strain. EMG sensors show the difference. Less tremor, less pain, more control. But the adaptation is never perfect. Every fix is a trade. Clarity for safety, beauty for survival, ambition for anatomy. The curse doesn't vanish. It adapts too. Volodos calls it the art of not dying. The world sees triumph. The pianist feels the cost in every joint, every nerve. For some, adaptation is the only way through the labyrinth. For others, it is a daily reminder that genius and collapse can live in the same hand. The next test is always waiting. A single spotlight. Sweat beads on Daniil Trifonov's brow as he sits, motionless, before the keys. The orchestra waits. The silence is a dare. Time fractures, one heartbeat, then another. He inhales, touches the opening chord of Rachmaninoff's Third Concerto, and the room contracts to the width of his hand. 13 centimeters, 10 fingers. The stretch is already past the comfort zone. No warm-up, no mercy. The audience will remember only the sound, but inside the performer's body, a war starts. The first run is clean, barely. The cadenza looms, a wall of octaves and chromatic storms. Trifonov's wrist twists, thumb tucks, the forearm burns. The score is a maze with no exits. Each leap is a risk, every chord a potential injury. The left hand, forced to leap 9 centimeters sideways in a single beat, starts to tremble. The right hand compensates, but the tension spreads. The mind races ahead, calculating, dreading the next impossible passage. A single slip, half a millimeter, a split-second hesitation would be enough to unravel everything. But the notes come one after another, like a heartbeat refusing to stop. The cadenza arrives. Trifonov's fingers blur. Sweat stings his eyes. The piano is no longer an instrument, it is an adversary. The audience hears triumph. He feels the threat in every muscle, every tendon that screams for relief. The page is a battlefield. Genius and collapse share the same breath. In this moment, ambition is indistinguishable from survival. Trifonov's arms ache, his back strains. The tempo surges, too fast, too slow, always on the edge. The orchestra swells, threatening to drown him. He claws his way through the final measures, hands shaking, vision tunneling. The last chord lands with the force of a confession. He does not hear applause. He hears his own breathing, ragged, desperate. Evgeny Kissin knows this feeling. In competition, he once described the final run as a blackout with the lights still on. The mind empties, the hands move on memory alone. The price of mastery is survival. The aftermath is exhaustion so deep it feels like defeat, even when the audience rises to its feet. This is the edge. No encore, no celebration. Only the knowledge that the music nearly broke him and might the next time. The myth of the curse is not a story. It is a lived reality, a memory stitched into the flesh of every pianist who makes it through. For a moment the hall is silent. Then the world resumes. But the cost lingers, raw and unfinished. The stage lights burn hotter now. Every year, more pianists chase the impossible, knowing the odds, craving the pain, risking everything for beauty that borders on self-destruction. Surgeons report a surge in performance injuries. Streaming platforms weaponize collapse for billions of views. Genius and ruin, locked in a death grip. The music survives, demanding new sacrifices. And somewhere, someone's hands still tremble at the first note. Are we witnessing greatness or feeding a machine that consumes its own? Tell me in the comments.